100% judge books by the cover, but I guess you can't always. Hey guys, welcome to my wrap up for the month of February. So in February, I read all of these books, plus a couple that went back to the library already that I couldn't keep. I mean, I could have kept them longer, but I felt bad, so I returned them. In this video, surprisingly to me, I decided to not film a wrap up at the end of each week, and decided I liked to film clips talking about the books right after I read them. So for the first week and a half, there's 2 videos at the beginning of February where I talk about the books that I read those weeks more in depth. And I'm not gonna actually talk about those books in these upcoming clips. I'm just gonna be talking about the ones from when I decided I wanted to film short little clips to the end of the month. So if there's a book from this stack that you're curious to hear my thoughts and it's not in this video, it's probably in one of those other 2 videos, which I will leave linked below. And I guess for this foreseeable future, I'm just going to be filming clips shortly after I read a book or 2 and sharing my thoughts that way, because I'm finding it easier to share my thoughts right after when things are more fresh. I'm more excited to rave or rant about books, and I feel like it's just more authentic, where because I don't remember everything about the books that I read. If I do a wrap up right at the end of the month, by that point I've forgotten details that I wanted to share, and I feel like this just works out better. So that's how it's going to be until I decide to change it again. I hope you enjoy all these little clips. I don't think anyone is more surprised than me that I actually am preferring these short little clips better than weekly wrap-ups. Who would have guessed? Okay, so I just finished a book, so now we will, like I probably said in my intro, we'll get into the shorter video clips talking about each book separately, which I realized I just prefer to do. Yeah, I'm sure I'll have some kind of intro to this. So I just finished this book. Now, this is not a book, I don't know who would pick up this book based off of the cover. I have purchased a different copy of this. I will put up a picture because this cover is terrible. Let's just talk about the cover for a minute. Okay, so the book is The Unexpected Mrs. Pollifax. What does the cover, I'm assuming this is the 1966 cover. That's when this book was written. I don't even know what's going on here. So if you look at the cover of the book that I bought that will be coming here later this week, there is a donkey on there that is part of the book. Is this a donkey? And like what? I'm just confused. Who gets the credit for this cover illustration? I don't know if I've ever, there's no credit for this cover, unfortunately, or fortunately maybe for that person. I don't know if I've ever seen a cover this bad. Like, I read the book and I don't really even understand the cover. So I enjoyed the book and I wanted to order a copy because I know if I ever want to recommend this book, no one's gonna pick it up based off of this cover. That's not gonna help. So I'm gonna put that book down. We're just gonna put the image of the current cover that I'm going to own up. I do have some issues with this cover as well because it makes it look like a cozy mystery book, which it's not. Although it's rated, or it's categorized as all the things on Goodreads, I would say that this is like a cozy espionage book, probably. Like if that was a subcategory, subgenre, that's what I would probably say. So we have Mrs. Pollifax, who in the opening scene, she's in the doctor's office. She's in her 60s. I think she's about 63. And he says that she seems a little bit down since her appointment last year. And she's like, oh yeah, like I volunteer in all these places. But she's like, he's right. Like my life just feels bland, really. So what does she decide to do? Well, she decides to join the CIA. She goes to the offices. Somehow she finds the office, the address. And she goes there and volunteers to be a spy. And through some interesting circumstances, right at the beginning of the book, she gets her job as a spy, which is encouraging for me, someone that always wanted to be a spy. You'd think by the time you're in your late 30s that time has passed, but now I have a new mission in life, to be a spy when I'm older. So, something I'm gonna be working towards. Yeah, so she ends up getting a mission to go to Mexico, and she's mostly just gonna be playing a tourist, so that's why she fits the bill so well, because she just looks like a little old lady, because she is just a little old lady. And I enjoyed this book. While it is not a mystery, it does kind of read like a mystery in many ways, and our main character, Mrs. Pollifax, reminds me a lot of a cross between Elizabeth and Joyce from the Thursday Murder Club. She's not like super seasoned like Elizabeth, but she's not as unaware as Joyce. She's actually really smart, but sometimes she does use her like old ladiness and her unassuming looking nature to her advantage, which I appreciate. I am all about people like in this kind of situation taking advantage of, if they look innocent, play it. And but actually having like smarts behind it, and not like Inspector Gadget just accidentally coming across things because other people are really doing the work and they're just bumbling along. So I won't tell you a whole lot. I did tab things, which is another reason I wanted to order a physical copy, because I want to move these tabs from my library book into my new book before this has to go back. And also, have I mentioned how terrible this cover is? So this is the first book in, I think, a 13 or 16 book series, and I'm definitely going to be continuing, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. It says, the Toronto Star, according to the back here, says Miss Pollifax gives Agatha Christie's Miss Marple a rival to reckon with. And I think she very much is a Miss Marple. She's just in it more, and we're getting the book from her point of view, whereas Miss Marple is just usually in the background and we don't really know what she's working on. Like, she is smart, but we don't see a whole lot of it. Yeah, so definitely excited about this. This was my Patreon pick that I had picked from the cards for my TBR, and those books are always so good. They have such good book recommendations there, so I'm excited that I read this one, because I never, like, I'm excited it popped up there, because I never would have picked this up based on the cover, and I 100% judge books by the cover, but I guess you can't always. So that's all for this book. Now I guess we'll jump back into multiple clips. I'm already halfway done another book that I was listening to on audio that I'm gonna start reading physically now, I think. So I should probably update again pretty soon. Today is another day where I've been painting, and apparently I just get it all over my hair, and the cat gets it all over his tail. We're pretty much twinning today. So while I've been painting, I have been listening to Secrets in the Mist by Morgan L. Bussey. I started this one right after it came out. I think I started it on audio, and I ended up DNFing it just because it wasn't really capturing my interest. But in the last year, I've been into science fiction more, and this is definitely science fiction, Christian science fiction. It's kind of post-apocalyptic. There's zombie-esque characters in it. So our main character, Cass, she lives in this world where there was plague wars a long time ago, and people pretty much became zombies through the plague, through the spores in the air, I guess. And then the other main character, his name is Theo. He's one of the 5 main families in this world. So they live higher up. They actually live in like islands in the sky, and it's called a sky island, because the mist, the spores that create and make people turned are down below. So like poor people are down below, and through a variety of different circumstances, Cass becomes a diver that travels on these sea ships and dives into cities that have been taken over by spores and have a bunch of turned, and they try to, like, they're pretty much pirates, kind of. I mean, I guess they're not stealing, they're stealing stuff that has been left behind. Yeah, so it's fascinating, actually. I do understand why I quit it last time when I started it, but I am enjoying it now, and I've jumped right into book 2, and since I still have more painting to do, I'm assuming I'll just continue that on audio. Also, my library has book 1 physically, but not book 2. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I like so I just barely filmed my video about series, all the series I started. This was not one of them, and how I like to space out my series normally. But when you're painting, sometimes you just go with whatever's available next. And Blood, whatever the second book is called, Blood of Secrets or something like that, was available. And I appreciate, because I'm jumping straight into book 2, I appreciate that there's no time in between. So this is a good series to read like one after another, because there's not a whole lot of recap, because it's like literally like the next moment. So I don't know how long this series is supposed to be. I don't know if it's going to be more than the 2 books or not. I hope not, because it'd be kind of cool just to wrap it all up together. But we will see. Yeah, so this was a DNF that ended up being better than I had expected, so I'm glad I stuck it out and tried it again. And this is also my first Enclave Publishing book that I have read for 2023, which is one of my goals for the year, to read 10 of them, I think was my goal. So we're already halfway through the second month of the year. About time I started working on that. Oh, my office lighting is so bad at this time of day. I just finished Stories That Bind Us. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know so many tears. I cried so many tears throughout this book. Pretty much all, especially the dark blue, but pretty much all the blue are tearful moments. I think I might be filming a video soon. I feel like this is really crooked. With the books that have made me cry, which, if I do it, may be up already by this point. Okay, so first of all, I think the back tells too much. My personal philosophy is usually to not give spoilers beyond page 50 for like an average length book, but the back gives things, like tells things that happen like at page 100, which is not my preferred thing. But let me just say, Susie Finkbeiner is a 5-star author for me. This is my 3rd book by her, and they've all been 5 stars. Most people say this one is their favorite. I still think, which one would I pick? There's All Manner of Things, and what was the other one? Nature of Small Birds, right? I think maybe one of those would be my number 1, but like, this is still an amazing book. So our main character, her name is Betty Sweet, and she is 40 in the 60s, and right at the beginning of the book, her husband passes away. So there's like all this grief stuff going on. I did have a few, like I felt like she was an older character because this set is set in the 60s, and she's using, like, to me, what are like old lady terms for clothing and stuff, but yet it was accurate to the time. But I kept forgetting how old she was because of those words that she was using. So that messed with my brain a bit. Yeah, and I don't wanna say all that it entails, but it is about her grief, and then there are other things in play here. But I feel like saying them is spoilers. The author dealt very well with depression and like mental illness and attempted suicide. Those are like trigger warnings, but also like last month when I did my January wrap up, I did not describe well my thoughts on The Midnight Library and how depression was tackled. And lots of people in the comments are not happy with me, and I don't feel like I could just reply in a comment describing what I was trying to say. But in that book, the author made the character very unlikable, and the character, she was not depressed in every timeline, and she was still a very unlikable character. And so thinking about that book that had a lot of the same themes as this book and how different the authors tackled it, this book is like so much better. And yeah, in my last video, I didn't mean to imply, but apparently it came off as though I thought like depression was just something people could just like get over themselves. That's not what I was getting at, but that character in that book was just really annoying. And like I said, she wasn't depressed in every single timeline, so she wasn't really always justified in the selfish ways that she was acting. And I just feel like there's a character in here that struggles with a lot of the same things as that character in that book, and this was approached in such a better way. I would be very curious to hear people's thoughts that have read that one and then read this one, but don't just read that one just because I mentioned that. It's not good. There was a couple little quotes here that I wanted to, well, I'm just gonna be rereading all the things that made me cry. There was this one line I really liked. Don't you think that when you do something that makes the world a better place, that it's worth pursuing? And I know there was another quote, I think before this, that I'm not finding. Oh, there was this one. Even the darkest night can't put out all the light. Before that it says, don't let the scary things of the world keep you from seeing the good. Even the darkest night can't put out all the light. Yes, highly recommend this book, but like you gotta be ready for a lot of hard things and an emotional time. I was waiting for somebody to pick up something that we were selling while I was reading this book, and like tears were streaming down my face, and I was like, oh, I hope they don't come right now because I'm gonna look like a complete basket case. Thankfully, I didn't have any tears at the moment when they came. But yeah, that's not the book I expected to finish next, but it is the one that I finished. And I'm glad it's off of my TBR because I knew it was gonna be a tearjerker, but I had no idea how much of a tearjerker it was going to be, which is good because I would have put it off for a long time then. Okay, I have a couple more reading updates. First of all, I did get a copy of this. Look at the difference. Oh, it's too bright. This is actually pink, not as white as it shows. But I didn't share this in my book haul because as I was going to transfer my tabs over, I realized it starts on page 25. There's no other pages before jumping into page 25. Oh my goodness, it's so bright. It doesn't want to focus, that's okay. So I have to return this. This was actually from Amazon, so I have to return it because it's a damaged book. I don't know what they're gonna do with it. And then I'll order a new one. So that's too bad. So there's that update. Then I read A Guinea Pig, Pride and Prejudice. I'm gonna fix, oh, you can kind of see that. Yeah, so this is all because of Janelle from Too Fond of Books. There, I got it so that it's not quite so bright. Yeah, Janelle from Too Fond of Books. She actually just shared this book in a book haul recently, and she had said that she had gotten it from the library system before, and we are in the same province, and we can request books from anywhere in the province, and I think there was one copy, so it's pretty cool. That means that Janelle had this book at her house at some point, and now I have it. So it's like on the one side we've got a short summary of what's happening in the Pride and Prejudice story, and then down here we have actual quotes from Pride and Prejudice. My favorite page, one that made me laugh out loud. Oh, first of all, there is a lineup of all the characters. This is, I don't know if this is adorable or incredibly awkward or what, but it's a little bit of both. My daughter wanted a hamster for a while. I was trying to convince her to go guinea pig. I really wanted a skinny pig. Okay, this quote. What painter could do justice to those beautiful eyes? With this picture? Yeah, that's oh, that made me laugh out loud. So while this is not a book that I'm going to be buying anytime soon, it was a fun one to get from the library, and I did look it up. The guy that wrote this, Alex somebody or other, Alex Goodwin, he has a couple more classics. I don't think any more Jane Austen, just a couple more classics that he has done with guinea pigs. Yeah. Okay, and then I did finish Blood Secrets by Morgan L. Bussey. So I guess that was just a duology. Sky World, I think, is the duology. I listened to it on audio, most of it while I was painting, and then the rest while I was making supper. And I think I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed the series. I think I gave the first one 4 stars as well. But the ending of that last one was so fast. I feel like there probably should have been another book. It should have been a trilogy. I wasn't a fan of the way it wrapped up, or the speed that it wrapped up. Maybe it just needed a couple more chapters. But the book was interesting. Since I just talked about it, I guess earlier in a different clip, I'm not gonna explain it because it's book 2 and I can't say much, so what I said from book 1 kind of carries over, and it was okay. So that means I finished 2 Enclave Publishing books out of my 10 goal for the year. So I've got a couple more to get to, but at least I'm not like behind. And then I'm currently reading a book like I always am, so I'm sure I'll check back in again soon. I finished another book, Magpie Murders. This is the one that my patron of the month over on Patreon picked out for me to read this month. So they get the option to pick a book off of my TBR or my wish list from Amazon, or now that I've scanned in all my books on my TBR shelf, they can also pick one of those books for me to read, and I already know what I'm reading for next month, or I guess March. By the time this goes live, this will be March. Yeah, so Magpie Murders was the book that was chosen for me, and this is a story within a story that has a mystery within a mystery, which can be a little much for my brain, but I do feel like I was following along with it pretty well. Overall, I'm going to give this book 3.5 stars. So we start out with the editor of this story that's inside of here. Her name is Susan Ryland, and she tells us how the story that we're about to read changed her life, and she wished she had never read it, I think is what she said. And it had like thriller vibes going in, like what are we going to be reading that this changed her life? And then we do that for like, we're only with her for a few pages, 4 pages, and then we like hop into the story that was sent to her as an editor, and she starts reading it, and it's very confusing because there is different page numbers. So when we're with the editor, her page numbers are on the top, and when we're in the story within the story, the page numbers are on the bottom, and they like start from the beginning. It hurts my brain. So the story within a story, we start off with a funeral, and this woman named Mary was vacuuming as she was cleaning this house. She's a housekeeper, and they say she tripped over the cord of the vacuum. So we're set in 1955 for this story within a story, and she tripped over the vacuum cord and fell down and broke her neck. But the detective in this story is approached by a woman who she is the fiance to the woman who died's son, and she doesn't think, well, she does. She just knows that her son didn't kill his mother, and the village thinks that he did, and they're whispering about it, and she wants that laid to rest. Anyway, it's really hard to describe this book because I don't know how much to say, because it is a story within a story, and it is a mystery, so you don't want to like give things away. Overall, I said I'm giving it about a 3.5 star. I really did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed this story within a story, which I don't always, because I can often get very confused. I didn't make a cast of characters or anything. I did a separate vlog on Patreon, like non-spoilery, until the end, where I talked in spoilers about a few issues that I had. And overall, I felt like the story was really detailed and intricate, and I enjoyed it. But I do feel like the ending was not up to par with the rest of the story. So that's kind of what brings it down. That's that book. I can't talk much without talking spoilers, I feel like. I will read more by this author. He has The House of Silk, which is some kind of like Sherlock-esque book or Sherlock spin-off or something that I'm going to try soon. Okay, with the power that is technology, you guys have no idea from clip to clip that it's been a while since I filmed the last clip. I sent out a newsletter today, and I kind of mentioned something was going on in there. So I went to the doctor on Tuesday. Today is Friday, and I went because I was getting nosebleeds kind of like on a regular basis for like the last year and a half. Went in just thinking we would like talk about it and then something would happen after that. Turns out he decided to right then and there, without even we didn't talk about anything. Like, I was in and they were like, this is what we're doing. They cauterized a blood vessel in my nose, and I don't know how much the camera's gonna pick up, and I don't feel like completely displaying my nose here. I had like silver nitrate, so like a tattoo pretty much on my nose, like a brown tattoo right out to here. There's still some silver nitrate on my nose, but I don't want to scrub it too much and irritate it. It feels like my face has been kicked. Even my mouth hurts. Like, it seriously feels like I've been kicked in the face, and it's already been a few days and it's feeling better, but I'm still like constantly taking Tylenol. I don't know if that's normal. I didn't know the questions to ask because I didn't know what was going on. Anyway, therefore, it's been a few days. I wanted to wait until I felt a little more normal and looked a little more normal. I'm like slathering Vaseline on my nose because it's raw. Anyway, so I have a few books to catch you up on because I've been reading instead of doing other things. There's a glare here that I need to fix. A couple of things. The first book I finished this the day that I was getting the whole nose thing done, is Aggressively Happy by Joy Marie Clarkson. I don't know if she always writes with her middle name or if it's just Joy Clarkson, but this is really good. So it's a realist guide to believing in the goodness of life, and it does feel a little bit like Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project with a Christian twist in some ways. There's some parts where I'm like, it didn't feel like she was a Christian writing it, because she doesn't throw out scripture as much as like her mother Sally Clarkson does or anything. But then in some ways I really appreciate that because I feel like I could maybe give this to a non-Christian and they won't just instantly close the book. But it's just different areas. What is this? She organized the book around 10 verbs. Befriend sadness, flounder well, remember you have a body, enjoy things unironically, tell yourself a good story, be like Mr. Collins, believe in God, accept love, expect the end of the world, and give yourself away. So she has, each chapter is one of those. And then she talks about that topic, and then at the end of each chapter she has a page which has a couple things to read, a couple things to see, a couple things to listen, and a couple things to ponder, all about the topic of the chapter. And I really did enjoy this. I flew through it, and I do plan on going back now and reading and looking at and listening to the things that she recommended. For the most part, I hadn't done any of that during the reading of it. I have read a lot of Sally Clarkson, who is her mom. I've read a little bit of Sarah Clarkson, and her writing to me feels a little bit unrealistic. It feels very academic is what it does. Joy Clarkson actually now has a PhD. I think she was the first one in her family to get her PhD. So if anyone feels like academic, it should be her, but this was so approachable. She does talk quite a bit about the pandemic in here, which I think is fair because that's when she was writing it, or like she was writing it during / shortly after it was published in 2022. So she would have been writing this during the pandemic, and a lot of being aggressively happy can be hard during a pandemic. I really enjoyed it. I am looking forward to picking up all of her future works. She's probably going to be an auto-buy author for me because of this. I don't know if there's any like quotes I should share. I just really did enjoy it. And I think this will be like a book that I go back to and actually reread. I reread nonfiction more often than fiction usually. Okay, the next one, I started Dreaming Water. This was the one I picked out of my little free library. It's still really bright. Because that was one of the prompts that I pulled for my TBR, was to read a book from my little free library. And I didn't get to, I got about 100 pages in probably, and then I decided to quit it. It was kind of interesting. The topic is about a woman who had Werner's syndrome, and at the start of the book she's 38 but has the appearance of an 80-year-old, so she ages twice as fast physically as a normal person, but not mentally. And unfortunately, even though the topic was interesting, I feel like the way it was written was very dry and boring. So that's too bad. But I pulled it out of a little free library not knowing anything about it, so you know, I didn't go into it thinking it was going to be amazing. It was out of my norm. There was a few good parts. It was just kind of dragging, and I was also like dealing with a whole head thing, so I just needed something that was going to catch my attention. So then I went on to Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and I pretty much read this in a day because I just did nothing the day after this whole thing. So this is a historical mystery where Emily Dickinson is kind of like our sleuth. So we're set in 1855, and our main character, her name is Willa Noble. She is just gotten a job here at the beginning of the book as a servant or a maid in the Dickinson home, and her brother has died, and there's maybe there was a murder, and so Willa and Emily search this out and try to find the answers. It's definitely a cozy mystery. I saw the ending, like the culprit, the guilty party, fairly well. I'm not super great at this, but like quite a bit before the ending, and I was like, is this supposed to be a surprise or not? Like, but I feel like that is kind of just a thing with cozy mysteries. The emphasis isn't necessarily on the whodunit all the time. So I think I give it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I will read more in the series. So I'm glad to find another historical mystery series that I enjoyed. So now I'm in the middle of reading another book. I'm hoping to finish another book or 2 before the end of the month. So we will see how that all goes. I will check in again soon. I have 2 books to update on, except my kitty is having a little nap over there. It's pretty cute. I posted it to Instagram if you want to see the picture. Okay, let's start with my nonfiction. I finished Hygge. I can't remember how to pronounce it. And I read this for my homeschool membership. We did a book club throughout the month. We read 2 chapters a month, 2 chapters a week, I mean, and discussed it. And this is kind of it says creating place for people to gather and the gospel to grow. And it's just taking this Danish concept of Hygge and Hygge? I don't remember how to pronounce it. And just how like that is very much similar to how we should be acting as Christians and stuff. And like any great analogy, it does fall apart at points. But she's talking about the 8 different chapters are about hospitality, relationships, well-being, atmosphere, comfort, contentment, rest, and a home for the homeless. And I tabbed up a lot in here because we were having a discussion. These are not like, I would probably have tabbed it a little less if I had been reading it just for my own enjoyment. But overall, I did enjoy it. There was a lot in here that I've like learned in the last few years about community and inviting people into your home and how that can be so much more effective. Actually, there was a really good point that she made here. She's talking about how they've invited a lot of people into their home, and though we did invite some of these weary ones to church, we didn't invite them all. They weren't all ready for the sometimes bewildering subculture of American church life. So instead, we invited them into our home. In doing so, we gave them a glimpse of the good home they could have someday. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the home is a really good like next step when you get to know someone. You can invite them into your home if they might not be ready to attend church. We have the fortunate advantage, I would say. Our church meets in a public space. We use a community building, so it doesn't feel like, for some people that maybe, you know, have been burned by church before or whatever, stepping into church does not feel like what maybe some people are used to. But I do understand what she's saying there. So there was that one. And then I think, well, I don't know. I finished Aberration by Kathy McCrum. So Recorder was one of my favorite books of 2022. Probably my favorite fiction book. It was a surprise science fiction. I just really liked the world. Our main character is considered a recorder, which they are just sent to different places to document things, not have any emotional bias or anything. They just record. And if they have emotions that they're not supposed to, or like just emotions really, or become biased, then they're hooked up to a drone that gives them like an electrical shock. Book 1 was like the biggest surprise of last year. I really enjoyed it. This one was my most anticipated book, I think, of this year, and in many ways at least, and it was disappointing. And it's too bad because I think the story was good, but I struggled to visualize it. It was a book that I felt like needed about 100 more pages. It isn't very long. It's 330 pages. It needed about 100 more pages to flesh this out so I could understand what was going on. I was confused by characters because we got introduced to a whole new cast of characters here, and then also reintroduced to a bunch from the last time, and I didn't remember who was who. And because they are like in space, they often refer to each other in their last name, but then also sometimes their first name. So I had like 2 names to be remembering and struggled with that. I'd struggled with figuring out like where on the ship we were, and then there was different parts where it was like it was supposed to be like a surprise, or like we were supposed to be shocked, but I was so confused. I wasn't shocked because I didn't know that I was supposed to be nervous or trusting this person or not trusting this person or whatever. But like the story that I could follow, I really enjoyed. I just needed more. I felt the same way with that middle grade science fiction that lots of people love, and I did love too, The Last Quintista. That one, our main character was like had a visual impairment, and once again, so she couldn't really see stuff, so I couldn't see stuff, and I found that's a big struggle for me. I need to be able to visualize things. So I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I think it's like a 3.5 star. The storyline is good. It just needed more to it so I could understand what was going on. So I don't know how long this series is going to be, but now I'm not as excited about book 3 as I was about book 2, but hopefully, like, I'm still invested in the characters. Just hopefully I'll be able to understand the story a bit more. So I think I should be able to finish 1 more book before the end of the month. We will see in my next update, I guess. And I have 2 last books to wrap up this month with. First of all, Counted with the Stars. Now this was the book for the Christian booktuber book club thing that I'm a part of. This month they do a spinner wheel. Each month biblical fiction was chosen. Everyone gave some suggestions. This is the one that won the poll. Counted with the Stars from Connellan Cossette. This is a biblical fiction set in Egypt as the Hebrews are, kind of as the plagues are happening and at the beginning of the time in the wilderness. And this is, there's a lot of controversy with biblical fiction, and I don't know really where I stand. This one does not really have any actual biblical characters in it. We're just following a character that is living during these times, and I know a lot of people will only read that kind of biblical fiction and other people will read like other ones, and I have read other ones. And I do see people's point as to why they don't want to read stories of people from the Bible, because it's adding stuff, and I get that. But I do like biblical fiction and historical fiction in general because I always learn a lot about the time period. This book was packed with a lot of facts about the time that I had no idea about, different customs, different things, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I think it is part of a series, and I don't know if I'm going to continue the series. I currently don't have the next book, but I do have 2 other books in a different series by her, so those will probably be my next ones by her. I'm not sure when or if I will ever continue with this series, but I enjoyed it. So we followed a girl named, I actually don't know how to pronounce her name, Kaya? She is an Egyptian, and right at the beginning of the book her father ends up in debt. So she is sold as an Egyptian slave. She grew up as an Egyptian with a slave, and now she has become a slave. And one of the slaves that she serves alongside is a Hebrew, and she starts to get to know a little bit about the Hebrews. And then the plagues start coming, and she gets to know a little bit about the Hebrew God. And I think it's a really good take or look into the time period. I really did enjoy this a lot. And then I'm gonna end on a book that I'm technically not done. I have this much left, but I feel fairly confident in my predictions on my final thoughts on this. So this is Awesomely Austen. I think that's the series. Jane Austen's Emma. So this is Emma in like an abridged version, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's like an adapted version for younger kids, middle grade, big words, lots of pictures. I still have not finished reading Emma by Jane Austen. I have read it before, but I'm rereading it. I haven't since like November, and I feel like this is giving me the motivation to actually finish it. And I watched a video adaptation recently, so I wanted to read through this and then I think pass it on to my daughter because we watched the movie together, and it's reminding me why I enjoyed Emma so much the first time I read it through. Unless things drastically change at the end, like I plan on finishing this shortly after I film and edit this video, so should get it done today. It's a very fast read for me. Assuming things continue the same, it's very well done adaptation. I think they've kept the heart of the story, kept most of the scenes in, kept even some of the language in there, but just made it easier to read. So I think it's very well done, and I really am enjoying these illustrations. There was a good one showing a little bit about Frank Churchill here. Where did that go? And at the beginning too, there is a cast of characters, which I will show you. I think it's also really helpful, especially for kids or for people that just aren't used to like Jane Austen's or like reading books set back in the 1800s. So we've got all the different characters. And I think that was a really nice addition to it. And oh yeah, okay, there's one scene I really liked. I find it harder to pick up on the original Emma, but in the movie that we watched, Miss Bates, she's quite the character. And in here they were talking about her mother, Mrs. Bates. It said Mrs. Bates had long since decided that the best thing to do in her old age was go deaf, and so she had. So this is the story about Emma, who thinks she's a good matchmaker because one match that she says she made worked out really well, and then she decides to do more matchmaking and it does not end up well. It is, I think, Jane Austen's funniest work, and yeah, I need to finish rereading the second one, or like rereading the original for my second time, and then I'm gonna do a video all about Jane Austen and ranking her books and talking about her more. So that is my wrap up for the month. Big surprise to me that I actually preferred these clips instead of weekly wrap-ups. I did not think the month was going to turn out that way. So let me know if you're excited to read any of these books now that you've heard me talk about them, or any recommendations that you guys have for me. I'm always excited to talk about books in the comments.